Hello everyone, I am back at my aunt's for vacation, for the holiday. I'm back at the apartment. That's my aunt's at Kamenavurla. And I was just thinking something. Was talking to AI, basically to like Gemini, Google, about how different, different, how like music, specifically commercial, contemporary music, like how different styles of music function in like different languages. It was like really specific. So like I was basically comparing like Greek celebrity singers, Greek lyco singers to like say the A-list celebrities of like the United States and the UK from the era of like monoculture, like the 2010s, say like Beyonce or like One Direction. I was comparing like how the lifestyle and like the ceiling of like a Greek celebrity compares to like an English one, and then English language one. It's a language market. It's huge. And then like I compared it to like other language markets, say French, francophone, huge market, or like a very niche one like Mongolian, or maybe Dutch. Dutch is semi-niche, kind of. It's kind of spoken. It's not like 4 or 5 million people like Mongolia, but it's lesser known compared to English. So yeah, and I was like basically thinking about that, like so like I was thinking about like Greek celebrities, Greek language singers, like and like actors as well to an extent, especially actors have like houses that are less flashy than the houses of like the American celebrities in like play like in like TV shows like MTV Cribs, MTV Cribs. I remember the Mariah Carey episode anyway. And I was thinking like Greek people, Greek celebrities, Greek people who are considered rich and famous, who sing or act in the Greek language market, are a lot more niche, are living quite a bit more modestly compared to people who sing in English or who act in English language movies or TV shows, or even like Korean celebrities. Korean is spoken in the world by like 50 million people, maybe like more if you consider the diaspora, and it's getting exported, and it's starting to incorporate a lot of English into their they're starting to incorporate a lot of English into their music, so they're spreading even more. So like when you compare like a Greek famous person's fame and fortune compared to like an American person's or a British person's, or like a Korean idol's fame and fortune, when you compare them, they're like one is like niche famous, the other's like global. Even now we're like even now that streaming has like fragmented what people listen. Monoculture is gone. Back in the day, everyone would know the same few celebrities, the same few singers, actors, maybe athletes. Uh, yeah, and like now there's like, and I was thinking to myself like, there are more famous people today than like any time in history before. There are more well-known people today than any time in history prior. Like when I was growing up, I could name maybe a few famous people, maybe a handful of famous A-list celebrities, maybe Beyonce, Adele, Ariana Grande, Katy Perry, One Direction, maybe like Maroon 5 and U2. I would like see occasionally, like listen to hear music from occasionally. Ronaldo and Messi. I remember the boys at my school talking about Ronaldo and Messi constantly. Uh, Maria Callas, I knew Maria Callas since I was a little kid. But like she's more of a historical figure at this point than like a proper currently active celebrities, so that's more like historical territory. Uh, Certain Greek composers that we would sing a lot at school, like Mikis Theodorakis, Manos Loizos, Dionys Savvopoulos, like famous Laiko singers like Anavisi or Pantelis Pantelidis. We all cried so much at school when we learned, like in 2015, that Pantelis Pantelidis died. It was such a big deal. It was news. The news came. Someone came outside the school to tell, like my friend's parents. I was friends with a couple twins, and their parents came to the school to tell them Pantelis Pantelidis died. And then the news spread like wildfire, and everyone in the school knew it. And it was a huge deal. But if you compare Pantelis Pantelidis notoriety and fortune to like Michael Jackson, extreme example, Johnny Cash, let's say Johnny Cash, it's like different ceilings, you know. Maybe I could name like Giannis Antetokounmpo, like the only Greek famous person I could name. There were like, and maybe later on, a little bit later on, I started being able to name like a few Korean idols, maybe. The occasional J-pop idol that was more of my own thing. I discovered J-pop through the internet. Mayu Watanabe, Sakura, I don't remember her last name, but Sakura from AKB48, Lisa or Jennie from Blackpink. And even then, even with K-pop groups that I could name, I could not always name every single member, especially for larger groups. For example, I definitely knew Taeyeon from Girls' Generation, but I didn't really remember Sohyun or Sooyoung. So yeah, I could name when I was growing up until maybe the age of 9 or 10, maybe up until then I could name maybe a few handful famous people that everyone knew and everyone listened to. Now that I'm older, as I got older, streaming came and Spotify came and became more widespread. And I got Avicii. I had definitely listened to music by Avicii. I also knew Avicii before that. I could name a handful of famous people, and some of them like Avicii or Sia or Kygo. I only knew them like because I spent a lot of time listening to Nightcore, and I only knew those by name, not really by face. I feel like Avicii is known more by voice or by name rather than by face. You don't know Avicii by face in the same way you know Ariana Grande. So yeah, up until the age of maybe 12 or so, 11 and 12, yeah, I could name a handful of famous people that everybody knew. I could name Ronaldo or Messi because the boys at my school would talk about football and they would talk about Ronaldo and Messi. And that was the extent of it. I could name a handful of famous people. Maybe like Leonidas Kavakos, I knew him by name, not by face, again. And needless to say, I knew very, very few Greek famous people who were relevant outside of Greece. Like, they were like a rare species to me. But now that I'm older, the older I get, the more I move from the era when streaming started going more mainstream, the more famous people I can name. I swear to God, there are more famous or semi-famous people on the internet and on streaming platforms than any time in history before. Like I can name like hundreds or like dozens of famous or semi-famous people and bands, influencers, micro celebrities. Let me name a few off the top of my head. Clavicular, the Luke Smaxer. Yeah, Clavicular, the Luke Smaxer. You know, the guy who's famous for injecting himself with peptides. The Wizard Liz, Hamza, like some of that is red pill bullshit, but you get my point. Let me think. Oh, Mr. Beast. I know PewDiePie. PewDiePie was like world famous. Who doesn't know PewDiePie? Let me think. Melanie Martinez, Aurora, Marina and the Diamonds. Some of these are a bit older and from before. Marina's from before the era of streaming, but you get my point. I would say SZA is semi-famous in Greece, maybe more famous in the US, but she definitely has global reach. Troye Sivan, Tate McRae, Addison Rae, Slater, Normani. Dodge is basically borderline A-list, or the modern equivalent, the post-monoculture equivalent of mainstream, like niche. It's kind of niche, but nearly everything is niche these days. Like, there's no monoculture anymore. There's no handful of people that everyone knows and listens to. It's no longer a handful of centimillionaires and billionaires. It's now many comfortable millionaires instead. And even more like working middle class artists. Let me name a niche band that I listen to that's truly niche, like less than 1 million listeners. High Water, I Chillin, a Korean group. Croctical. Croctical is a band, one of my favorite idols from Dreamcatcher. One of my favorite groups I've known since I was a kid. They have disbanded now. Oh yeah, Sion started this band. Like, it's a niche band. But I can name like thousands or dozens of well-known and notorious people now. Niche atheist YouTubers, I guess you can say. Cosmic Skeptic, Alex O'Connor is like semi-famous, like maybe recognizable. Girl Defined went kind of viral. They went viral for like being fundamentalist Christians. The Doogers, I guess they're famous from like a TV series, so not exactly influencers, but you get my point. I can now name, instead of being able to name a few like billionaires, a few comfortable, famous billionaires, I can now name dozens and dozens of people with varying degrees of notoriety. There's even channels that you watch on YouTube that have less than 10,000 subscribers, and I still watch them. Let me name another. Oh, what's the girl? Clara Dow, the girl that had this TikTok account about having a flat chest. She had a flat chest and she felt bad about it, and made a TikTok about it, and she now got a boob job. Yeah, I can now name dozens of famous people. Dozens. Cat's Eye is kind of famous. They're kind of K-pop, but also not. Like, only one member of theirs is Korean. Kind of famous. My grandma does know them, but she only knows them because I listen to Cat's Eye, so. And a lot of K-pop. She knows a lot of idols, not because they're Beyonce level, but because I tell her about them. She listens to my music. So yeah, now I can name dozens and dozens of famous people that I could simply not name. And not only I can name famous people, I can name even lesser known, more niche or more domestic acts that are like getting recognition, getting more notoriety. Yeah, there's never been a time in history before where you can name dozens and dozens of famous people. Historically, you would only be able to name a few, like Eminem, Beyonce, Ariana Grande. Some people say Ariana Grande is trying to retire. Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato. I knew Dove Cameron, kind of, because I watched Disney Channel. I knew Victoria Justice because I watched Nickelodeon, but that's because I was a kid, so these are more like P-list, I guess. I knew Sabrina Carpenter because before she was like mega famous. I knew her when she was still niche. I was vaguely familiar with her from Girl Meets World, and I watched Bizarre Work as a kid. So I had definitely like seen Olivia Rodrigo's name in like the credits, somewhere in the credits. Yeah, I watched them as a kid. So I guess Cameron Diaz, my classmate in middle school in elementary and middle school was devastated when Cameron Diaz passed away. The guy who played like a character in Descendants anyway. Like there's never, so yeah, I could name like a handful of people who were A-list and a smaller handful of people who were B-list and marketed towards kids. I could name a few composers that everyone knew Greece. I could name a few like singers and edechno singers that everyone knew. But I could not, there has never been a time before in my life where I can name dozens and dozens and dozens of people who are medium famous off the top of my head. Let me think of another one. Belle Delphine, the streamer who like went in a bathtub and collected the water and started selling the water from her bathtub to her audience, to the men in her audience. Bad Baby, I only know her because one of my classmates when I was in middle school would like show me Bad Baby, like she was like trying to be a rapper, I guess, and she went famous for going on this show called Dr. Phil. Yeah, she was like famous for being bad, I guess, for being like a troubled kid and being very mean. She said like this phrase, "Cast me outside, how about that?" And it like became a meme phrase, and she became famous. and now she's doing OnlyFans. Lil Tay, I knew her by face, not by name. Now I know her because she's like she was like the kid who said she was like flexing money and like fancy in like a fancy house that was really like her brother's. He was like a real estate agent. She was not really rich. She was like flexing money and saying she was the youngest flexer alive. Like I know her by face, I knew her by face, not by name. So yeah, Lil Tay, Piper Roquel, famous for starting an OnlyFans when as soon as she turned 18. And Little Tay did that as well, and some of the content might have been filmed before, so it might technically be illegal. Trisha Paytas, troll influencer. Oh my god, Ollie London, the guy who tried to turn himself Korean. He's a British guy, blonde British guy who tried to turn himself Korean with surgery, and even like went to the Philippines and tried to become a Filipino rapper at some point. Oh yeah, he had his issues, but the point is I can name thousands and thousands, like dozens and hundreds of people who are like medium tier famous or like varying degrees of famous. Yeah. Whereas before, when I was a kid, I could name a handful of celebrities, a couple of YouTubers I watched, maybe PewDiePie, maybe Markiplier. They were like the A-listers of YouTube. This was when the algorithm was different and everyone watched the same few people. The algorithm promoted the same few people. Now there's thousands and thousands of people who have varying degrees of notoriety instead of there being a few handful of people with 1 million or a gazillion subscribers. So like the lesson of this video is that if you wanna be like an artist or like an author or like like an influencer or something, whatever, if you wanna be a creative, there's never been a time in history there's never been a time in history where fame is more accessible. Fame and notoriety in general, I would recommend you don't immediately aim for like Beyonce fame. There's never been a time in history where some degree of notoriety. There's never been a time in history where having notoriety and building an audience was more accessible than it is today. This is the best time in history to build an audience and to like be a creative. I'm not saying you should aim to be Beyonce immediately, obviously. That might not even be possible in today's ecosystem. I would say the last standing bastion pop star of monoculture was like Billie Eilish. That's it. She's the last standing globally, like grandma knows her dear famous. Whereas like even Sabrina is kind of niche here in Greece. She's like more known than like Troye Sivan. Yes, but like she's still niche. Even today's famous people do not compare to the A-listers of the 2010s because instead of there being a few comfortable billionaires, there are now many comfortable millionaires and thousandaires and middle class, Middle East working artists. So there's never been a better time in history to build an audience. Whether your aim is Beyonce or to be a working artist, there has never been a time in history where notoriety is more accessible. Was more accessible. Sorry, like there's never been a better time to be a creative, and that's what I had to say for today. I might post a little bit more often now. I'm trying to like revamp my channel and like improve the quality of my videos. Yeah, that's all I had to say. See you later. Take care.